Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Truckers of Reddit, what's the weirdest, creepiest, scariest or most WTF thing you've seen while on the road or at a stop? Came down a hill with a full load of grain, gross weight around 86,000 pounds, and rounded a curve doing somewhere close to 60 miles per hour. I laid on the air horn and hit the tractor and trailer brakes and stopped about 15 feet from the launch chairs. The people had already SHT'd their pants and were standing next to the bridge railing. Trucker here. A few years back, I was traveling through Ute native land in New Mexico on Highway 491. 491 used to be Route 666, but they changed it a few years back. I think people were stealing the signs. The orange flash quickly inflated into a giant ball, bigger than the sun. It even had a fiery-looking texture to it. Suddenly, the orange ball disappeared, and the entire desert sky, horizon to horizon, flashed a bright yellow, lighting up the everything around me like it was daytime. This all happened within a few seconds, but it was definitely the weirdest thing I've seen on the road. Okay, I've told this to my friends several times, but I guess I can share it here too. I was driving for Costco a few years back. It was around this time of year. We usually took extra toy shipments to various locations due to the holiday season. We got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed to restock their giant Spider-Man dolls. I loaded my truck and headed out on the 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to just being tired and popped a couple of Notos. About 15 minutes later the road started to fog up. I mean more so than any other time before or since. There wasn't any other cars on the road and I was ahead of time, so I figured I could wait until it cleared up a bit. About 5 minutes of sitting still in silence, my truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, nothing. I try to crank it but it was like the battery was dead. I try my CB but cannot get anyone on. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying. Or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Now I'm a big man. 6 feet 3 inches, 250 pounds, but I refused to exit my cab. I did roll down my window and asked if anybody needed help. At that point I felt like the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window and it seemed like the more scared I became the louder the laugh went. Then as soon as it started it stopped. And just like that my truck started back up and the fog dissipated. I drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I run to the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that really just happen? I go out to the diner and see this fella in a John Deere hat, red flanner, and blue jeans. I needed to know if anyone else experienced that too. I had to hop on the laptop for this one. No way in hell I'm typing all this out with swipe. It's mostly UFO/supernatural stuff I've seen out on the interstate. Within the first few months of driving ERC was PA. My first couple years I was a night driver, so it was hard to see things sometimes. At one point I start to fall back because I can feel the van starting to lean. Looked like Revolutionary War era. He had a musket as well. As I approach, I can see him staring right at me, and then he starts walking back into the tree line still looking at me. Before he manages to make it through the trees, he disappears. Like literally vanishes in thin air. After about a mile, the air warmed up again. I had a really sad feeling come over me for a while afterward. Needless to say, I didn't stop for the rest of my shift. New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah are some states that to this day, I still see SHT in the skies that I can't explain. Lights rapidly changing direction and taking off at blinding speeds, but no sound barrier being broken. Various shapes and sizes from what I can make out. Again, night driver. I know military aircraft pretty well, and some of them more than likely were, but some of them absolutely cannot be any military aircraft currently in mainstream use. Conventional aircraft do not move like that. And decided to turn it into a 15-minute break since my ass was sore anyway. As I'm stargazing and admiring how clear the sky is, I saw what looked like a formation of lights in the shape of a triangle lift off from the desert floor, and then take off into the sky. I look down at my watch and notice it's not ticking, so I pull out my phone and it's off. I turn my phone on, and according to the time on my phone, it had been 5 minutes since my watch stopped. I felt like whatever it was that just took off had something to do with it. Kent, Texas is another one. There's an old Chevron station, I think it is. Seems like FedEx drivers like stopping in there in droves. I'm guessing it's a popular drop and hook point for them or something. But I stop one day, and I need to take a piss. I don't know why I didn't stop in Van Horn. Kent is an abandoned town. I walk up to the bush line and notice a makeshift fire pit. The wood is somewhat burned, but not all the way. The weird thing is that there's an unscathed dollar bill stuck in the wood. For a second I was like, "Who piece of candy?" But then this sudden feeling of nope came over me. As I'm walking back, I look over at it and get a real negative feeling. I look to the ground in front of me and bam, there's a rattlesnake looking right at me. I stop dead in my tracks, and walk carefully around it, and it keeps staring at me. I kicked up a lot of dust getting out of there, and have never stopped in Kent since. Missouri, I stopped at an off-ramp to stretch out and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out giggles and says, "Hi, mister." My initial reaction was, the FCK is a little kid doing out here at this time? So I talk back and say hi. Now utterly confused, I ask her what she means. No response. Then suddenly I feel like somebody is standing next to me, but it doesn't feel negative or bad. Just feels like somebody is right there next to me. Since it didn't have a negative vibe to it, I just finished my cigarette and left. So I scramble to look at my GPS and find the nearest truck stop. I find one and set the course. As I roll up to the truck stop, my truck starts sputtering and I barely make it to the fuel line before the truck starts dying. I ran out of fuel right as I got on the fuel line. I've had many lot lizards try the good time routine with me. One in particular got up on my truck and started talking to me. Her breath was pretty bad, not something I wanted to smell as I'm doing my logbook getting ready to shut down. Nope. Then for some reason she reaches down her spandex shorts and scratches herself deep. Her hand comes back up onto the door and I can smell the most rancid crotch rot my nostrils have ever been blessed with. She smiles and wishes me a good night, then hops on another driver's truck across the way. 10 minutes later, she's in his truck and it's not long before you see the cab rocking. I ate my granola bar and noped the FCK out to the sleeper and went to bed. One occasion in Arizona, a WTF moment. A lady was begging for money, which isn't uncommon at truck stops. She gave me the whole sob story of her boyfriend left her, she didn't have a job, lost the apartment, her 2 kids were hungry, and she didn't know what to do. To make it short, she was molested by her father as a child, raped on several occasions in her teen years, and then found a lesser of an evil boyfriend who tried to get her into drugs, got her pregnant, and beat her all the time. It ended up being $40. She broke down and cried right there, and then I started to wonder that maybe she was telling the truth. She walked away after some more small talk. I go inside to get dinner, and bigger than shit, I see her with 2 kids that look as sad as can be getting dinner. I knew then that she wasn't lying about anything she told me, and I felt a lot of remorse for not doing more. So I told the waitress to put their meal on my tab. The look on her face when the waitress said their meal was being paid by somebody else was a look I'll never forget. Used to work in distribution at a bread plant, and there's one memorable experience involving a truck. Corporate just implemented this trolley-less loading system that involved putting product on tiny 4-wheeled trolleys. You stack up your bread, pies etc. onto trays that sit on these trolleys, and roll them into the trailer. Easy as pie. No pun intended. Engineers had concluded that, to hold back these stacks from flying out the back, you'd install a strap every 2 rows of stacks, 4 stacks in a row. Well, corporate didn't send us enough of these straps, and we ran out of straps for 1 load, save 2. Told our boss that we can't send a load because we didn't have enough, so he storms up to the dock, tells us lazy dog F-seekers to just use the 2 straps at the back. So we did. Driver pulled out the load, and got maybe 25 feet before physics took over. I saw the doors fly open and 140 by 4 by 48 loaves of bread slid out the back like a waterfall. The 2 straps snapped right in half and flung into the wall of the trailer, making a 2-long gash. It took 4 guys 8 hours to clean it all up. No trucks could enter or leave until it was, either. This also happened around midnight when all the long-haul drivers delivered the product to smaller distribution centers across the country for further distribution to stores. They even had to call a wrecking crew to pull the trailer aside. The sudden 20,000 pounds of force had damaged the frame so badly the driver refused to pull it. Customers got pissed off because their deliveries were late, arriving in midday. They started taking me seriously after then. I was demoted to production, grab Z-pans, load Z-pans, wiped as wheat. The boss got a nice promotion to a cushy office job. Then there was this other time where a couple crackheads set a load on fire in our yard, and nobody noticed there was a 50-tall fire out in the yard for hours. I loved working there, mostly for the huge amount of WTFs you saw on a daily basis. I own a truck but just to RV around. One night in Oklahoma I stopped to take a poo. Pulled in, parked, and walked in. Settled into a stall when the door opens and closes quickly. A quiet Spanish accented man says, "Do you know who sings this song?" "No bro. Sorry so sorry," and he's gone. My cousin's a long-haul driver and he reckons the scariest thing he's ever seen was his own rig on fire. He was driving at night somewhere in the northwest of Australia when he saw some sparks in his passenger wing mirror. He stopped to check it out and saw that the rim of one of his rear wheels was glowing red hot because the wheel bearing had shat itself. Before he could even think, the tires burst into flames. He was unable to reach the fire extinguisher because of the flames, so he had to call the fire brigade and stand back. Not a trucker, but I drive a box truck, so suck it up. On Halloween this year I saw a pale lady in a white dress walking around with what looked like a baby in her hands. I was driving down the interstate when this happened and even stopped, but she walked into the woods. Is a second-hand trucker story okay? My friend is a truck driver and I asked him this same question, and boy did he deliver. My friend stopped at a truck stop in South Carolina where they had only one working shower stall and it was occupied. Inside, the guy is standing with his back to the water, vigorously f-king a sub sandwich from the shop in the truck stop. My friend just said what the FCK and closed the shower curtain and went and waited in his truck. My friend didn't end up showering that day. Saw a guy with his pants around his ankles as he was passing me. I thought, that's kinda weird. Then I saw the whole side of him stroking his flaccid wiener furiously. I learned not to look down so much into cars' interiors. My dad was a trucker for years, and when he was sleeping at a rest stop one night he woke up to a noise outside of his truck. He saw the glow of a cigarette and the man smoking it offered to smoke my dad's pole and perform other sexual favors. My dad pulled a gun on him and left. I drive a truck on a delivery route in a pretty rural part of Kentucky. Just today, I witnessed two black labs fighting in the middle of the road over something. Once I got a little closer, I could tell they were fighting tooth and nail over a severed deer foot. A few weeks ago I was driving up to a farmer's house. Dude has a driveway that's about a mile long. I top the last little hill and I see 3 owls sitting on his fence posts. Probably the creepiest thing I've ever witnessed was when I drove by a house that was in the midst of being set ablaze by the owner's meth-addled brother. It was relatively late, around 10. All I see is a spark and then flames in my side mirrors. Not a trucker, but I have been a dispatcher for many years and have seen many things unfold. One of my drivers making a delivery at Family Dollar store in Detroit had several black males rob them at gunpoint, told the manager give me the boxes fat boy, and loaded up the back of the SUV with random Family Dollar shit. Another driver called me from his floorboard parked at a stoplight in Detroit and said he needed me to call the cops because kids were calling him cracker and throwing rocks at his truck. Had to instruct him to put on his big boy pants, get back in the driver's seat and drive away. Saw live feed from Dallas terminal as trucks and trailers are flying through the air because an F5 tornado ran right over the Schneider yard. Had a driver end his life by driving his truck full speed into the Edwardsville, Illinois terminal trying to take as many with him as possible. Driver yesterday told me on his return trip he saw and heard a family burning alive inside their vehicle and there was nothing he could do to help. Apparently there was a bad accident and something happened to cause the large fire which very quickly engulfed their vehicles. Another driver got distracted and didn't see traffic had stopped in front of him. He plowed into the back of another truck at about 60 miles an hour, and the entire cab of the truck looked like an explosion had been set off from the inside. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.